I live alone on the outskirts of Ashbine, a small mountain town tucked into the forests of western North Carolina. The area is peaceful but incredibly remote, no neighbors within earshot, just trees, old trails, and the sound of wind shifting through pine. I'm a 32-year-old freelance illustrator, and I work entirely from home. My cabin sits on roughly 30 acres of wooded land, accessible only by a gravel road that turns to dirt before it reaches the highway. This all started one Friday in late October. I'd just wrapped up a tight client deadline around 6:30 p.m. and decided to head into town to pick up a few essential snacks, cleaning supplies, and something quick for dinner. The town center isn't much. One grocery store, a gas station, and a diner that closes by 8. It was already dusky as I parked near the back of the store lot, the kind of twilight where everything takes on a bluish tint. Inside, the store was nearly empty. I grabbed a basket and started down the aisles. That's when I noticed a man. He stood alone near the canned goods, hands in the pockets of a stained windbreaker, just staring. I glanced over and gave a polite nod, assuming I'd caught him mid-thought. But then I saw him again 2 aisles over, just standing there, watching. I picked up my pace. By the time I hit the freezer section, he was there too. Close, only 5 or 6 feet away. Not shopping, just there. I muttered a quick hi, trying not to sound shaken, and turned away. He didn't respond. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. Something wasn't right. I hurried through the checkout, hands slightly trembling as I loaded my car. As I shut the trunk and slid into the driver's seat, I froze. The same man was across the lot, partially obscured between 2 parked SUVs, staring directly at me. Still no groceries, still no expression. Trying to keep calm, I backed out and drove off, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. No one followed, at least not right away. The roads home were empty, winding, and pitch black by now. My high beams cut through the trees like a knife, but even so, shadows seemed to flicker just outside my vision. My mind raced with excuses. Maybe he was just weird. Maybe it was a coincidence. I pulled up to my cabin and parked out front. The cold mountain air was sharp, and the silence almost deafening. I grabbed 2 bags and carried them inside. While putting things away, I got distracted by a call from my sister. We talked for nearly 20 minutes. I laughed. I even forgot about the man until I stepped back outside to grab the rest of the groceries. That's when I saw it. A pickup truck, parked along the tree line. No lights. No engine. Just there. I stood motionless, my heart slamming against my ribs. I knew that truck hadn't been there earlier, and this wasn't a public road. Whoever it was had deliberately driven onto my property, half a mile off the main path, and stopped. I grabbed the remaining groceries, never turning my back to the woods, and bolted inside. I locked every door, every window, drew every curtain. Then I sat in the dark, barely breathing, eyes glued to the front of the house. An hour passed, then another. Nothing moved. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really was just someone looking for a place to sleep. But that didn't explain the man, or the way he looked at me, or how he found my home. By 11:00 p.m., exhausted, I went upstairs to bed, if only to shut my eyes and pretend none of this was real. I kept the lights off and my phone close. For a while, the silence was comforting, until I woke up. No light, no sound, just a suffocating sense of dread sitting in my chest like a stone. I checked the time too, 41 a.m. I needed the bathroom, but as I stepped out into the hallway, I froze. A soft creak echoed from downstairs. I waited, holding my breath. Another creak. I slowly approached the stairwell. Moonlight bled through the curtains downstairs, casting faint shapes onto the walls. Then movement. A shadow glided across the hallway below. My breath caught. My limbs went cold. I backed away slowly, step by agonizing step, until I reached my bedroom and shut the door without a sound. I called 911 in a whisper. Minutes passed. Long, agonizing minutes. Then footsteps, soft but deliberate, moved across the floor below. I could hear them pacing, first the kitchen, then the living room, then silence. I clutched the phone like a lifeline. Suddenly, sirens. A red flash pierced the woods. Car doors slammed. Then chaos. I heard frantic footsteps inside, sprinting. Then the front door burst open. Voices shouted. Someone ran. The deputies caught him 30 yards from the cabin. It was him, the man from the store. He was armed with a hunting knife. When questioned, he claimed he was just looking for a place to sleep. But police found no sleeping bag, no supplies, nothing. He never stole a thing. What chills me the most is what they didn't find. They didn't find rope, duct tape, or weapons in the truck. They found a notebook. Inside were scribbled notes. My name, my cabin address, details about what time I entered the store, what I bought. He'd been following me long before I noticed. Even after they took him away, I didn't sleep. I just sat on my bed, shivering. Every noise amplified 100 times in my head. A branch brushing against the siding felt like footsteps. The ticking of the wall clock made my skin crawl. My safe, quiet cabin had been violated, its silence now tainted. The next morning, I gave a statement. The officers stayed for hours, checking for signs of forced entry. There weren't any. That meant he got in through an unlocked door, or maybe, somehow, he'd been inside before I even saw the truck. The thought made me physically ill. I asked one of the deputies if they'd seen this kind of thing before. He looked at me grimly and said, "More than you'd think. Remote places like this, they attract people like him." I couldn't bring myself to eat. I couldn't even step outside to look at where the truck had been. My phone buzzed with texts from my sister, who by then had heard everything. She begged me to come stay with her. I told her I needed a few days to think. The truth is, I couldn't even pack. Every room I walked into felt watched. Every corner of my house seemed darker than it had yesterday. Even with the man gone, his presence still lingered like the echo of a scream. I barely slept the next night, or the one after that. And even now, months later, I still lock every door twice. I check behind my shower curtain. I jump at every crunch of gravel outside. I bought motion detectors, floodlights, cameras. None of it brings back that sense of peace I used to have. They never charged him with anything more than trespassing and attempted burglary. But I know what it really was. It was a hunt, and I was the target. I moved my workspace into the city a month later. I couldn't handle the isolation anymore. What used to feel like freedom now felt like vulnerability. The silence I once cherished had turned into a constant reminder of how close I came to disappearing without a trace. I haven't returned to that cabin since. It was early November when I decided to take the long way home through the back roads of Vermont. My name's Kyle Jensen. I'm 28, and after spending a few days with college friends in New Hampshire, I figured a quiet scenic drive would help clear my head before heading back to my apartment in Albany. I planned the trip so that each night I'd stop somewhere rural and stay in a different Airbnb cabin. Most were basic, but better than a sketchy highway motel. That Friday, I left my second stop around 5:45 p.m. The sky was already dimming fast. My final destination for the night was a small cabin just outside a ghost town called Elkhorn Pines. There wasn't much around, just woods, winding roads, and the kind of darkness that swallows your car whole. I pulled into the gravel driveway around 7:30 p.m. The cabin looked decent enough, tucked between two massive pine trees, almost too perfect in its symmetry. A motion light flicked on as I stepped out, casting long, jerky shadows behind me. The keypad lock worked fine. Inside, The place smelled like fresh paint and pine cleaner. New floors, faux fireplace, one bedroom. Nothing fancy, but it felt oddly hollow, like a stage set. I dropped my duffel bag on the couch and ate a cold burger I'd picked up along the way. 10 minutes into my meal, someone knocked on the door. The sound made me jolt so hard, I spilled fries onto the floor. No car lights, no tires on gravel, no footsteps. Just the knock. I cautiously approached and peeked out the peephole. A man, maybe early 40s, was standing there. Tall, thick grey beard, shaved head, dressed in a worn flannel and jeans. He smiled. "Hey there. Just wanted to make sure you got in okay," he said cheerfully. I opened the door just a crack. "Yeah, all good, thanks." "No problems with the keypad?" he asked, still smiling. "Nope, everything's fine," I said quickly. He gave a small wave. "All right, well, sleep tight. Cold night out here." "Yeah, you too," I muttered, then shut and locked the door. Something felt off. There had been no mention of a host living nearby in the booking details, and his presence, unannounced, made my skin crawl. Plus, he smelled awful. Not just sweat, but something acrid, like damp leaves, rust, and decay. I tried to shake it off. I cleaned up, took a quick shower, and lay in bed with my phone. I was just beginning to relax when there was another knock. Harder this time, more insistent. My heart rate spiked. I sat up and listened. No footsteps again. No vehicle. I crept to the door and didn't open it. "What is it?" I called out. The voice responded gently. "Just forgot to mention something. Could you open up real quick?" I hesitated. "I'm good, thanks," I said. A long silence. "Are you sure?" he asked. Then silence again. 30 seconds. A minute. I leaned in and checked the peephole. No one there. Confused, I flipped the porch light on and peeked through the side window. Empty. But when I turned around to go back to the bedroom, I froze. A face, right outside the living room window. His face, inches from the glass. Eyes wide, unblinking. I stumbled backward in pure panic, nearly dropping my phone. I ran into the bedroom and locked the door, dialing 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher stayed calm. I tried to whisper that someone was trying to break in. I could hear scraping sounds near the side of the house, like he was dragging something metal along the siding, then tapping slow and rhythmic against the windows. He was circling the cabin. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. Then I heard the back door handle jiggle. Once, twice. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, just in case. Then the front door creaked slightly. How did he get in? The dispatcher said the nearest patrol was 12 minutes out. I crouched in the corner, breath shallow, ears straining for any sound. Then footsteps, heavy ones, moved down the hallway outside the bedroom. Closer. They stopped right outside the door. I held the lamp like a weapon. Then, the red and blue lights flooded through the windows. Sirens, shouts. The front door slammed open. The footsteps retreated. A thud. A crash. More shouting. Then silence. They didn't catch him. The man had bolted into the trees before they could surround the property. One officer stayed with me, while the others searched the woods. When the real host was finally contacted, he was horrified. He lived 3 hours away and had never sent anyone to check on me. The man who came to the door had no connection to the property. He had been lying. The officers found scratch marks on all the windows. They found muddy footprints leading in a full circle around the house. They found fingerprints on every door and window, but they never found him. I don't know what he wanted, but I know what I felt. And it wasn't just fear. It was the absolute certainty that if I had opened that door again, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch. I checked locks 5 times before bed. I covered windows. I kept my phone within arm's reach. I kept thinking about the way he smiled like he'd done this before. Like it was part of a game I never agreed to play. What scared me the most was that he never forced his way in. He waited. He watched. He wanted me to let him in, to say yes. To this day, I wonder how long he had been nearby before that knock. Did he follow my car? Did he watch me eat, shower, sleep? There are things we fear because they are dangerous. Then there are things we fear because they enjoy it. And that man, he enjoyed it. It was the first week of December when my family decided to take a winter getaway deep in the Adirondacks. I'm Daniel Reyes, 20 years old, and my mom had just finalized a stressful job transition. We needed a break, so she booked a secluded cabin far north of Old Forge, New York. It was supposed to be a quiet place to recharge before the holidays. It was just the three of us, me, my mom, and my little sister Lily, who had just turned 9. The cabin was one we'd never been to, rented online for a good price. It wasn't until we were already 3 hours into our 10-hour drive that my mom mentioned it was nearly 40 minutes away from the nearest town. By then, it was too late to turn back. The farther we drove, the denser the forest became. Massive birches and snow-laden evergreens lined the road. Cell service dropped to 0. Lily slept most of the way. I took turns driving with my mom. When we finally reached the clearing where the cabin sat, the sun was just beginning to disappear behind the tree line, painting the sky with streaks of violet and fire orange. The cabin looked old, hand-built, with weather-worn siding and shutters that creaked in the wind. It had charm, sure, but something about its stillness made me uneasy. Everything around it felt untouched, like no one had been here for a very long time. Inside, the floor groaned with every step. The walls were bare pine planks. There was a wood-burning stove in the corner, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. No internet, no TV, just us and the forest. That night, after unpacking and lighting the fireplace, I crashed on the couch for a nap while my mom put Lily to bed. When I woke, the room was dim, lit only by the fire's fading glow. Mom had gone to bed. I checked, the time 9:52 p.m. Too early to sleep again. So I grabbed a hoodie, slipped on boots, and stepped out onto the back porch. The cold hit immediately, biting, dry. The wooden deck creaked under my weight. Before me lay a snow-dusted forest, black and silent. No traffic, no wind, no sound at all, save for the occasional snapping twig somewhere out there in the dark. I breathed in the stillness. Then I noticed a bundle of split firewood stacked by the porch. In the center of the deck sat a rusted metal fire pit. I decided to light it. After some effort, the fire flared to life, casting flickering orange light on the trees. I sat for a while, just watching. Time slowed. The fire crackled and hissed. Then I heard it. A sharp, deliberate sound echoing from the woods, like an axe splitting wood. One single strike. No follow-up. Just that. I turned toward the noise, trying to gauge the distance. It wasn't far, maybe 60 or 70 yards into the trees. But in the dark, it felt much closer. My skin prickled. My breath came out faster. I sat perfectly still, waiting to hear it again. But it never came. Just silence. A heavy, dreadful silence. I extinguished the fire pit and slipped back inside, locking the door behind me. My mom and Lily were still asleep. I didn't want to scare them over what was probably just a hunter or someone camping nearby. Still, something about that sound, its suddenness, the cold intent behind it, unsettled me. I stayed in the living room with my downloaded shows, trying to calm down. Maybe 20 minutes later, I heard something again. A soft thump against the side of the cabin. I paused the video. Then another. A low creak. Was it the wind? The building settling? A louder knock jolted me to my feet. Someone was at the front door. Not knocking politely, but pounding. The sound reverberated through the thin walls. I rushed to the hallway as my mom stepped out of her room, face pale. "Who is that?" she asked, panic in her voice. "I don't know," I said, heart thundering. "Don't open the door." She grabbed her phone and ducked back into the bedroom with Lily. I crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. There was a man standing there, stocky, wearing a long coat and beanie. His face was obscured by the dark, but in his hand, reflecting the porch light, was the unmistakable shape of an axe. He wasn't speaking, just standing, breathing heavily. Then he raised the axe slowly and pounded on the door again. 1, 2, 3. I stumbled back, my chest tight, vision tunneling. From the back of the cabin, I heard Lily start to cry. The man didn't say a word. He didn't ask for help. He just stood there, knocking. My mom whispered that police were on their way, but given how remote we were, it could take 15 minutes or more. Then it happened. A sharp crack splintered the air as the blade of the axe pierced through the wooden door. Only a few inches, but it was enough. My mom screamed. I yelled for her to grab Lily and lock themselves in the back bedroom. I grabbed the fireplace poker and ran, heart in my throat, and barricaded myself against the door as more strikes came slow, steady, brutal. Then suddenly nothing. Silence. Minutes passed. Had he left? I didn't dare check. It felt like an hour, but eventually, red and blue lights lit up the trees. The police had arrived. I ran outside, waving them down. They searched the area, but found no trace of him, just deep boot prints leading from the woods to our cabin and back again. The officer who examined the axe marks said they were deliberate, calculated, not frantic like a robber or someone desperate, but methodical, patient. A hunter, he called him. But he wasn't after animals. We packed up and left the next morning before sunrise. Later, we found out there were no campsites nearby, no trails, no hunting allowed in that section of forest. Whoever he was, he shouldn't have been there. And he definitely wasn't lost. That night changed all of us. My mom refused to stay in another remote rental after that. She cancelled every future listing she had bookmarked. Lily still asks, why did the man want to hurt us? And no one knows how to answer her. As for me, I can't shake the feeling that we were chosen, that it wasn't random, that he saw the fire from deep within the woods, crept closer, and decided to play his game. I often think about what would have happened if I had stayed out there 10 minutes longer. What if I had fallen asleep by the fire pit? What if I hadn't locked the door behind me? Or what if he had gotten through? The officer later told us it was likely he'd been watching for a while. There were multiple paths of disturbed snow and trampled brush along the side of the cabin signs that he'd circled the property more than once. He hadn't just shown up. He had been waiting. There's a cold kind of horror that comes not from ghosts or monsters, but from human intent, from the realization that someone out there had every opportunity to do something unspeakable and very nearly did. I still have dreams about it. Not nightmares of the attack itself, but of the silence beforehand, of sitting in that wooden chair, staring into the fire and feeling completely at peace while someone watched from the trees. And the worst part? We never saw his face. We never got a name, a face, or a motive. And that kind of absence of answers, of closure, makes the horror feel infinite, open-ended, like it could happen again, anywhere.